Because morals takes a backseat. Morals doesn't change, but people want them to. It's more of like, it's not the priority when you're in a survival situation, but as you get out of survival into thrival, then it's a capability that advances your light faster, and you get more authority when you're seen pure of heart by beings. They seek you out as a champion because they don't see you as like you can betray them easily, and you know, worthy. So there's a lot to moral code that I recommend in making it like really good and pure. There you know, with each situation in the remedy of karma, there are people that will make a whole part and branch of themselves that's like a lightning rod for karma that resolves stuff, and then they go into the karmic creation as the bad guy, and sometimes that'll be the same being as the really good guy ultimately in spirit of their spirit tree. So there's a lot going on with that, and sometimes they can influence each other, or sometimes the light being can get possessed. Sometimes they like dark sorcerers will force summon a part of these deities and then capture it and then corrupt it and force it into a prison in themselves, and that will then outreach out of their body and be like really corrupted version of themselves that will interact with people. And it's like with the false light angels, essentially all dark, I mean, all evil doesn't earn its authority. It has it shut down, especially in this earth, this realm. Maybe in the anti-verse there's some different stuff going on because it's more of a predatory, like apex predator system than moral code, but earth grants abilities through moral code here. So they steal the negative non-moral dark steals their authority. So there's always an original authority that the false light has got their stuff from. So there's false light versions of all these different angels. You can thank the Vatican for a lot of that. They do ceremonies that, like with kids that sacrifice them, and is like arranged to try to get an angel to save the kid or whatever, and then they capture the angel, and then they put, you know, there's prisons for that, and they have then they corrupt that and use that energy to make a false light version. There's other, like the fall of Atlantis, a lot of divinity and angels and positive protectors for the planet were captured or destroyed or devoured, or you know, and then that authority is being used by a false light version that's claiming that name if it's in our mythos, and that will try to get in and filter in the way of somebody perceiving the pure version of that entity. So there's a lot of these angel, like some people I know are like really disheartened with angels, and they think it's all bullshit or false light and stuff. So like I do, like they probably perceive the false light versions. I've perceived both false light and the light. If you want to determine what's false light, it's about discernment. And a false light being has a dark core, and it surrounds itself with stolen light energy. So if you penetrate to the core of their being and ask them questions deeply, then you can figure out if they're false light, as well as they won't do anything against their free will as a false light being. If they won't do anything against their free will if they're a true light being. Then
they won't require like sacrifices and things like that. That's a big thing that people don't really understand. And so, you know, my mom, I guess she discussed with me before this, like the African gods or the certain gods that people like Shungun, and I can't even say them all, but that they are earthbound gods. And so there's a difference between earthbound gods and actual natural gods. And then Terry also said, how will this change as we move onto fifth density? But I also question, some of us are already fifth and above already. You know what I mean? Like we're actually changing. And I think people's expectation of what the change looks like is maybe thwarting them from understanding that we're farther along than we think we are in some cases. Like some people have actually limited themselves to fifth density, and it's like, oh no, actually, some of us are actually reaching beyond that, and we're right here, right now, beyond. Is that too much?
I love your questions. Yeah, I'll just finish up with the Saint Germain thing a lot,
Go
and then I'll
ahead.
go with that. Yeah, I fairly like Saint Germain, but I've also run into the false light versions. And there's like a bunch of people claiming to be them. There's like stories of them showing up, and like Saint Germain's like this immortal that like knows the alchemical formula for life extension. And so like, are they truly dead when like they have been seen to live over 500 years and fake their death multiple times? So there's like a lot with that, and camouflage, and I'm not going to really comment on that. But a lot of these sages will not just be one spirit. There'll be an entire collective of onion rings of spirits that wanted to be a part of that experience and give what they're good at to the experience, to hold it up and maintain it and make it like a big presence in evolution. Because those points are like when those beings are going through the movie play script of the great journey of their life, it affects everything in the collective in a grand evolution that makes every part of spirit in that collective evolve. So a lot of beings that know about it, and even into the future, if they can travel back in time, will want to be a part of that experience. So everyone, a lot like for instance, like Christ consciousness, Jesus, Yahshua, Emmanuel, is an expression of the unity of everything in a body. So that's not a lot of people. I ran into so many people that are like, I'm Jesus. It's like, well, technically you are. And then so like there's onion layers to each one of these beings and deities of like a huge collective. And you can go into how much that spirit has invested into that life and added to it and made it better. And you can like rank that and towards the center. And of course, there's like maybe one that's like more so impactful on the rest of the experience, and the experience and the decision making, especially if that being is going into sovereignty. But that will be camouflaged too and be hard to like exactly interpret for a purposeful reason, so it's not easily targeted and attacked. So you can see that with gods and their DNA lineages they pass down to us, and these high-end sages that walk the earth. So that makes it very complicated, because there is also a collective of light, dark, and neutral in a person, and depending on who interacts with that, they can get very jaded with the experience if it was bad, and sometimes there's deception, or there things to take care of with actual boundaries, because sometimes there's a corruption going on, because these beings get attacked too. They get targeted and then wounded and sometimes taken over, because a lot of the authorities have been corrupted and taken over or captured into themselves. So I like to restore old authorities that was the original holder of the light and the authority to hold up the world, that actually earned it. And as they become whole, they get more sanity and they do their job. And as you purify them of this darkness that doesn't earn it, then it's better and better for the world, and forgiveness can be had for these beings. And my goal is to ultimately unite with everything. But people, I can understand people's boundaries with it. With the density dimension topic, there's a lot. I'm not super expert at it. I'm eventually gonna try to define it incredibly well. I heard different people's perceptions. I may have a little bit of a different one. I'm integrating multiple experiences people are having, and like interpreting what I see from what they're experiencing, and different places in their body. With the dimensionality and density, it has to do with what you are having in energetic extension of it. There's like dimensions and densities that can be perceived in levels for a person's source, their higher self, and their consciousness that they're experiencing. So that'll be can be wildly different. The most suppressed and blocked and contained, and usually by all the negative programs of mind control on this planet to limit and wound people, is around the consciousness. But many people have expressed themselves in a greater dimensionality in their source, in their higher self, that extends out of their body and is doing chess moves around the planet. So that would be the thing that most people is experiencing as they grow in capacity to do more work. Then there's also the experience, because some people actually remember elevating to a higher dimension temporarily and experiencing and talking to all these different beings. Sometimes a guide that is in another dimension can give you enough energy to experience a fourth dimensional or fifth dimensional or sixth or beyond dream that's like very elevated and crazy and amazing and beautiful, and it impacts your life. So that there'll be that. Sometimes there's a vision, sometimes you're actually being taken out of your body and you can remember that. Temporal dilation, sometimes you have to forget that. And then I also like apply full density or dimensionality, or getting an elevation to that level and then gaining the frosting layer of it, and then you needing to fill that to where it's strong and resilient, because some people will elevate to a thing in a big healing and ceremony and activation and psychedelic experience, and then the world is kind of vicious and brutal and it tries to push us back down, so that will push us back down to a certain level. So there's a resilience that needs to be gained so that they can't push you back down as well. That's in that process. But yeah, everyone's growing in interesting ways. Some I will even see like places around the planet that are at a higher density or dimensionality than other places. So there's a lot going on to it. I can't really cookie cutter it.
Yeah, I totally feel it. I literally told Marvel this the other day that, and I told a bunch of people how we just felt at the convention, this energy of having, maybe not all 1,000 people are on the same page, but to have that many people in a room, in a location, actually wishing well and sending love and receiving love openly, that it created this sense of this gigantic love bubble. And then also here we are collecting information, making these connections, and feeling this purpose and this resonance inside ourselves, that it lifts you up to this place, whether it's fifth, sixth, whatever someone wants to call it. That when someone else came in my presence and they were like a cacophony, this type of energy that was completely upset and angry, and it tried to penetrate my energy. Like I literally felt like I had been electrocuted. Like I couldn't stand the voice. I couldn't stand the energy that was being sent towards me. And it made me think about the Jesus archetype, how he was like, God, how has thou forsaken me? Because if you had to come, if you can reach up into that level of positivity and love energy, and for someone to try to pull you down out of it, that shit is so painful. And you're like, no, like get away from it. Like you can't stand it. And so maybe this is why people are saying like, my vibration is so high. Like we want to love people, but then sometimes we have to distance ourselves from them because it's just way too painful if they're going to try to pull you down at that presence. A lot of people think that they can raise someone else's frequency or vibration. I'm here to say that, no, you cannot. What happens is if you want to communicate with this person, you actually have to let go of all that and actually come down with them, because you cannot stay in creator's energy and be connected to the source and be connected to this low density vibration. So I don't even know if there was a question in there, but how do you function like that when you have to come out of your love cocoon and come down to, this bitterness or anger or people that are, or do you even do it? Or do you just like, miss me with that? Like, how do you deal with that?
I love that. Oh my God, every question you have is like expanding more than other people that I have. Uh yeah, good one. So yeah, light beings, that goes into a lot. There's like stories of these eminence, shining ones, expressing vibrant, fiery beings that come and show themselves to humanity, and it can be sometimes super intense, and to the point where like there's like a story like this love interest of Zeus, as an example, demanded that he show her his true form, and he's like, no, I can't do that. If I do that, I'll hurt you. And then he's like she's like, well, I'm gonna do this and this and this if you don't. He's like, oh, okay, I got to. And then he showed himself, and she died from it. So there's like beings that are at such a high vibrational state that you can't express that. So that there's an art and a method and technology to presenting yourself in a way that doesn't harm a person of different vibrations. And there's times you got to shine and let your wings soar. And you sometimes it's there's a like, will I harm anybody by doing that? And I've even had that in experiences, and learn how to balance the two. And because you can learn how to shine yourself even more and more and more, while also having a part of yourself that protects and maintains and prevents it from harming others. Yeah, and then there's the vibration of what a person can express themselves, and it can blow the tops off of people's crown, and it fries them. And like my mom, I can't talk to her for too long in a high vibration, because she will get a headache and she'll ask me to stop. So I have to slow myself down for pretty much everyone I talk to. But I get excited when I get to unlimited wise, or more so anyway.
I never thought of us being able to fry someone else with positivity. That's a
Yeah,
whole different aspect, because we always think of how they're affecting us, but not how, I mean, I understand the dissonance that they're going to be like repelled by us, but I never really thought of it in the aspect of actually it's actually hurting them. Yeah.
and going into what you're saying, which was wonderful, because I barely heard anyone talk about, which shows your experience. And with raising a person's vibration, there is the ability and method and the experience. There is a moral code with it, because it's bad to force, evolve, enlighten anyone that's over 70% good. You will get karma for it. So there's that to be careful with.
I'm
But
glad you brought that up, because we want to fix people to the point where we're actually taking on their karma by not
right.
allowing them to learn the lessons that they're supposed to. And so that's like moms and everybody, but especially when you're in the mom position, ooh, you're gonna get a spanking. So
Yeah, and with that, that doesn't mean like you can't like shine yourself, and because there's an art to it, because it's more about force evolving them in like intensity of light, to where it's like transmuting their cells, and their mind, their consciousness, emotion, all that, in such a rapid intensity that it can feel very uncomfortable. Like this, I will, for people to understand this, like beings under 70% light, there's more of a okay to do that, because the moral ambiguity, and especially if they're 70% dark, then it's like free game. They're like harming beings. You can bring them into light. A lot of these negative beings that attach to people, people just being happy and loving, and having that energetic space of excitement and high vibration. This makes this field around them that makes it super uncomfortable for any entity to attach to you. So it makes them it repels them. So they when they want to attach and steal energy, they have to bring them down to their level, and then like a negative motions, and then drain off them. So when like usually when I'm doing an exorcism or a depossession or a capturing mechanism, I use a system of with when there's I have a shielding defense when entities negative big ass predators come and attach to me and they don't want to let go no matter what because they really like my energy and are stealing it and wounding me and other stuff. And then I start capturing them and I turn up the heat and I make a light that gets brighter and brighter and brighter to such an intensity with first love, and then it starts getting fiery and painful and suffering to them the more they attach in the places they attach to get them to let go. And unless they embrace the love, then they'll feel a lot better, and then they'll go to I send them to a really nice place. It's like a VIP club, and the ones that let go and go through the portal get special treatment. The longer you hold on, the more suffering. And then the last is like destruction in love and light. So if they really bad, then but it's like a supernova blast. So you can get really intense, and it will also expose any darkness in a person in varying levels of light, neutral, or dark, and that can be uncomfortable for them to when you show a big light, then it exposes the darkness within them they don't want to see, and that can also flare up, especially with different entity attachments, and then they feel bad, and the entity will be like, no, get away, say this thing, shut it down, and it'll influence them. And there's a lot to it. So I like your thing into it, and yeah, it's each person, there's a projection from them and their higher self and their ego, what is acceptable and what starts getting uncomfortable, and then you can kind of feel it in your emotions and then match that, and then go along with an art for dealing with it, so it's not anything negative.
I'm laughing because he talks so fast. I think you're just gonna have to watch the video later at like half speed. That's all. Because I already knew how it was gonna be. So anyway, but just think, you got like twice as much information in the same amount of time, maybe 3 times as much. But I like what you were saying, how a lot of people see this battle with the energy as fighting it blow for blow, but we're not here to fight it blow for blow. We're here to transmute it and send it to the light. And so if someone is attacking us, the first thing we want to do is to just punch them in the eye. You know what I mean? And just like punch them in the gut. And it's like, no, because now you really have a even harder fight, because you're trying to take your energy to fight this entity or this person blow for blow, when what you need to do is invoke, that creator source power and allow it to be lifted up and taken away from you. And it is still somewhat of a battle, but it's not the same as if you were trying to wrestle this thing down and hurt it and harm it. You're really trying to transmute it, not trying to just have a fist fight or a brawl. Yeah, look at you. There you go. It's
like
always
with a baby,
something with the love.
A lot of these negative entities are like a lot of very powerful old soul people are here as humans, whether they know it or not. So a lot of people are older than a lot of the dark and demons that show up that have been fractured as like minions of like these apex predators. So as they show up to you, you can like treat them as like your old mother or father figure of the universe, and like treating this baby that's crying internally, that's like sad and like shielded up, that doesn't let anything in and is throwing darkness to get attention, and like bringing compassionate love and acceptance till it opens up and allows you in to turn on its heart and light it. Some of these beings have never experienced love before, so as you do that, then you can unite with all these different forces with boundaries, and get them to bring all the skeleton keys that from the dark system to the light, and that makes everything better. Yeah, I used to beat shit up all the time, and I used to do like combat and martial arts a lot, and I still do, but I do it with love now. I used to get attacked a lot, so it would be like, oh, this is never ending, and I'd get attacked at night right before I go to sleep. So it's like, and I'm like fighting all night, and sometimes I don't sleep. And that was horrible, and like sometimes I'd elevate to where I could take down apex predators, but they would never stop coming if I was in that mode of conscious with
They were
war.
like, bring it. You like to
Mm.
fight? Okay.
Yeah,
They'd rather fight than go to the light.
exactly. They're good
So
at
they want to
war.
rumble. Yeah, they want to rumble. Terry said, I have seen people who exercise energies without taking them up to the light and transmute it. Terry, what is your thought behind that?
Well, I've known people who've done this, and it's like they're lacking the compassion that this energy needs to be help. We have that ability to help to transmute it, and a lot of I've seen people where they just cast them out, and so that energy then becomes more fragmented and becomes more nasty.
And because you said that, and because we all know this, you were sitting there. There was a person in front of me that I swear was a reptile that had been set on fire. And he was just talking, nose running, sunglasses on. It's midnight. This person, I'm like, I said, you are in a lot of pain. All I could do was feel the pain. Other people were irritated by him, and they were like, oh, he's, they were actually like attacking him, and all I could do was tell him, like, you're in so much pain, you're hurting. And it's easy to see the people in our own lives that are what the Bible would call helpless and harassed, because that's what they are. They're helpless and harassed. They actually have no power over themselves. They're being whipped around and bashed. And they're, like, just imagine, like, when someone, like you said, an exorcism, and they're thrashing their body around, they're actually being tormented. And my job is not to torment them anymore. I understand that. Can you imagine if you had a bug in your head and all you could do is think about this one thing over and over and over again? You tormenting that spirit or that being is not what you're supposed to be doing. You need to be, like, how they say, compassionate reassignment, and moving them out of this space of pain back into the light. And I feel like there's lots of people here who it almost seems compassionate to put them to sleep because they're so tormented. Like, how do you like, let's just say that person that was there literally at the conference, that person is insufferable. They're not gonna, just because you lock a door or get security or turn your back or scold them, that doesn't stop them from being in pain. It doesn't stop them from roaming to and fro. It actually magnifies and intenses the pain and anguish that makes them even more tormented. And I was just thinking, like, what do you do with these people? Like, how do you help them? Because it almost seemed like this person was in so much pain. All I could see was, like, he needs to go to sleep. And I know that's not legal, that we can't go around euthanizing people and stuff, but that's all I could think was, like, how do you get this to stop for that person? Because I would hate to be trapped in their state of being. I don't know if there's a question, but you could take it. I'm to the point where I'm just, like, saying stuff now.
Well, yeah, I like that perspective and how you'd handle that, where most people would go into the mode of anger and that back and forth, and then it just ramp up in that territory. Yeah, and compassion, seeing, like, with bullies and people that are in a negative mindset, that there is something that got them there. There's a whole history to that, and there's reasons why beings become evil. There's a whole history to. There's, like, maybe wounds, the loss of love, a loss of self, like such corruption and attack that came internally and stifled their light, and to where they don't feel it anymore, and they're taken over by something else, and so fractured they're barely 1% of their soul. So there's a
They're
lot
at
of
a level of shared soul. And I hope people understand that too. Like they're not even in charge of their soul. They're not even like you say, they're a fraction of their own soul. They're actually and I'm gonna tell you this, like just to even remember that thought and the placement of that day, that it actually hurt my head to think about it, to even recount that. That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's too
is that one
painful.
where you were like releasing
Oh
pain?
no, not him. It was the one
Okay.
I asked you, was he set on fire before? Because he seemed as if he had gotten set on fire before. And I was like, he was in a lot of pain. That other person, that was my husband in a past life. And so we had a little energetic conversation. It was like, wow. It was a lot of fun.
I like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was like, wow. I'm gonna tell you, okay, I'll just tell y'all because I had that unicorn head thing on, and I was putting my forehead next to other people and not really understanding that putting your third eye next to someone else's third eye causes soul recognition. And so I already had recognition for the woman that was standing there who he just imagine, I know this guy and he just met this woman, but when they're next to each other, they look like twins to me. And I was like, oh my God. And I kept seeing this thing around her forehead that's not there, but I'm looking like, why do I see this? And once I put the forehead next to each other, soul recognition kicked in. And I had already said some really positive things to him, but I said some other things that I don't know what I said. And then I put my hands on him, put my hands on his chest, and those were like some unresolved issues from our past life. And she had done a reading on him about the very same thing earlier that day. And so I was like, your heart, you know? And she had already talked to him about his heart. And it was a really cool experience because we were all like, well, what happened? And she was just letting me know, even the thing that I saw on her head was something she had as a high priestess in a past life. So I was like, oh my God, I can see. Like I was starting to trust myself more because I see things, but I don't always trust myself. And so having those confirmations were better. But this was the other guy with the shades. And I was like, oh, is he set on fire? And you were like, you already know. You're like, you already know this. But anyway, painful part. It was just painful even to remember that part. So
I'm sorry to trigger you. Yeah. Or
I did that.
so no one's too far gone in like unhealableness, even like the worst or psychopaths, but like it does still need a certain level of capability for each one, and each of the higher level ups needs like a surgical aspect of attention in different ways, and sometimes like treatments, and like them to want to do it and allow it. So there's a lot to it, but with
So
that
this
art,
curing a psychopath, a sociopath, and a narcissist. And I've been told by some people don't mess with that at all. And
right.
Some people feel they can. And you're saying they're not uncurable. So that's different. Okay.
Yeah, it takes an art and to be able to tune into the person so that you have a tailored aspect to them, and it's not a cookie cutter solution, because a lot of the psychopaths, you got to energetically be able to turn back on their empathy and their emotional body and the part of their brain that perceives that. And a lot of them have it shut down, and you got to go back to the experience of why that happened in the first place, whether it be this life, like secondary psychopath, it was they turned into that through the experience, or their first group psychopath that was born that way. And that also goes into who they are in soul and how much of their soul is still there, if they're being puppeted by something. And there's a lot of entity possession going on with it too. And even with that too, with demons being possessed by people, I've had conversations with like super soldiers and stuff, that and other possessed beings, as I depossess them with the demon altar, that tells me what they got going on, and like how what they're experiencing and why they do. And I do psychological archaeology to ask deeper into why they think the way they do, and a lot of it goes to them not being able to experience love or never experiencing love, and they don't know what it is, and they associate thrill as love, and they get like experiences through causing pain or having power over people or killing with the thrill, and that being what they associate with love, and even causing pain to themselves with that type of consciousness. So
it makes me think about now people who have affairs or who commit to dangerous type relationships so that they can always create drama, and then they're like, oh, I'm in love, but it's really all the fucking drama and all the things associated with it to make them think that they're in love. And so if they're in a regular relationship where people are just happy and nobody's trying to stab anybody, they don't fucking think, they're like, no, this is boring. Because
right.
they crave really all that dramatic attention.
Exactly. Drama creates thrill, and that thrill is when a being is shut down to base consciousness, base on the square in the chessboard in Freemasonry concept. They're not in like fear dominated survival. They're the biggest emotion they can create is thrill, and they get most of the others shut down, so they are experiencing it. So a lot of people pretend they're experiencing love when they're not, and they are closed off. They got all these layers and heart walls on them, and their aperture to be able to experience universal love is closed down. So as one helps them pick away at that and release the shields and boundaries that no longer serve them anymore and are preventing them to experience greater love, and replace it with shielding that doesn't prevent love, and so they feel safe, and they get rid of the threats that like cause, and they go back to some whatever the cause of trauma, which will be traumatic to them and be emotional, so that a lot of them will avoid it. Then they can experience more. A lot of it will be the sadness and negative emotions and crying and stuff that they will experience in the beginning as they release these layers, because that is the pathway to opening up the heart, to be able, those heartaches, like every like relationship a person's been through, and they have great heartaches. There is a whole bunch of sadness that comes from that, but it breaks through and opens up themselves to even more if they do heal it all. But a lot of people don't. But if they do heal it all, then they can even feel and perceive and know even more than what they did before. So there's like events to each. There's the silver lining behind every wound and trauma that we experience, if we can put the pieces back together, because then we gain a whole nother layer of both resilience and knowingness.
What's your time limit, Sean?
Well, I can go longer if you want to take a restroom break real quick.
No, I don't need a restroom break. Do you need a restroom break?
Yeah, I'll go real quick and then I'll be back.
You go take a restroom break. I'm gonna talk to these ladies and be like, girl, did you see? Girl, how y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? Are you overcharged, supercharged, right on charge?
I'm right on charge. All this is great information, and I'm gonna have to watch this like 3 or 4 more times.
I'm telling you guys, take notes, because when I listen to him and the vast amount of information that he has, it's like, it's download city. And to me, like I could like fall asleep and put this over me and be like, like, oh yeah. It feels so good. And
There's so much information. It's just like, okay, I'm listening and I'm listening, and then he's on, and it's I can't listen as fast as I want to integrate the information, you know. So I just like I'm kind of like closing my eyes a bit, just so I'm not the other senses are not engaged, so I can hear everything that he's saying.
Oh man, Linda is freaking loving it. Gladys is here. She said Sean is on point. And sounds like me once upon a time. And Dom, I was when he was talking about processing the anger or tension and stress, and processing that energy and using it to work out. And what did he say? Going into something overload or something. He said something. And I was thinking, oh man, Dom, you could probably use that kind of energy so that you make sure you stay on point, right? In more ways than one. So yeah, very powerful and very useful. It's very awesome to have like a male figure telling us, or telling especially other males, how to process this energy, especially love energy. And Dom and Lindell, like you two are like two of the strongest male energies that I know. And Josh too, and Josh, all the Joshes. And like you guys are like these strong male energies. You all express yourself somewhat differently, but you are all very much in touch with your ability to say, I love you, the ability to cry, the ability to love the children. And like, you're like these fully integrated beings that I look to and I'm like, oh my God, And there's other people in the group too. And I'm like, wow, look at these positive role models. I really love the galactic dudes. I love the galactic chicks. But for me, as a person who came from a place where my mom used to say, oh, all guys want is, this, it's very refreshing to have like these brothers who love us and they love each other and they can share that love with one another to show us that, you can have a strong male that's not necessarily a toxic male, and kind of breaking the association between toxic masculinity and masculinity, because it's working its way to the point where all of a sudden any type of masculinity is labeled as toxic, and that's a lie, it's a deception, and it's a manipulation. So that being said, Sean is back. How do you feel about that though, that label of the toxic masculine?
I have a lot of feelings. I have like a whole orchestra of perspectives inside me, and I love like listening
Let me get my
to
straw.
different voices and opinions on it, and the world of in both psychology and archetypes and perceptions throughout history and examples, and even in the dating market, and like how it like works and perspectives. I even like asked a lot of my exes and other people that I meet, like, so how do you define toxic masculinity or toxic femininity? And it's like and the divine femininity, or masculinity, and like the different modes, because there's like an importance to seeing those two aspects of us internally, and ways to bring them together in unity, and get them to grow exponentially. And ways to do that is through doing shadow work on the toxic aspects of ourselves, and like the shadow work and transmuting that light, dark into light, that lead consciousness into gold. Yeah, and I'd like to ask you guys the same question. How do you define toxic masculinity? I guess I'm gonna ask you that before I answer, and then I'll answer something too.
Well, I'm gonna shoot out first, ladies, and I'll give you all a chance. My thing with this is that here it is, we're all fucking toxic. You know what I mean? Like, we all have our shit. And if we can get to the point where we start owning our personal shit and stop labeling it masculine and feminine when it comes to our toxicity, because we have fucking ego problems and we got work to do. And what the biggest problem is that we don't want anybody telling us about our own shit. So we don't want anyone to tell us about our own personal shit, and we don't want to be addressed, right? And so therefore the quickest solution to that is for us to lash out and point out what's wrong with someone else versus actually dealing with what's going on inside of us personally. That's number one. Number two, it's a game going on where, the whole She-Ra Wonder Woman thing, like, yeah, we can embrace it, but yeah, it can go over the top, because there's aspects of us that have been abused in the past. But the biggest problem, like you said, is we begin to overcompensate or overcorrect. And so what happens is the person who is the abused now becomes the abuser. And we become these people that use these broad generalizations about people. You always, you never, everybody this, Black people that, white people. And we just have like these broad strokes on who does what when we are not fucking bothering to get to know people as individuals and actually breaking it down to, you know, yeah, we are separate and we're individual, but then also understanding that there's a connection between each one of us. As I hurt you, you hurt me, it ripples out. And it's a bigger picture than masculine and feminine. Then also let's address the fact that there's ambiguity too, sexual ambiguity and androgyny. And here we have like this thing where people are saying, oh, gay people are attacked and transgenders are attacked. And now here it is again with the abused becoming the abuser, because there really was space for us to change when it comes to discussing gender. Because yeah, not every girl wants a kitchen set and not every boy wants to use a wrench. So there was space for change in that area of limiting people and putting them in boxes and saying this is who they should be and who they should become. But the whole idea of this broad stroke of transgenders or gay or any type of alphabet being against straight, and this whole idea of the whole thing is just a hot mess. Everybody's, I think a lot of people are using these broad strokes to manipulate things for their own agendas, and that's what's toxic. So I said a lot of stuff, but Terry.
You can't, well, just listening to all of this, this goes back generations of how masculinity was defined, what femininity was defined, and it was, you know, it was blurred, and there was expectations, and the expectations were such that nobody could live up to the expectations that society put on the genders. And so, you know, we saw you know, that this was the kind of man that we wanted to have, or this was the perfect woman, and nobody could live up to that. And so then it just created this whole disappointment. Is like, well, you're not like, I don't know, the famous people who were there, whether we would see them as you know, an actor on the stage. You know, let's go to Gone with the Wind. We all see who Rhett Butler was like, and so, you know, that you'd fall in love with this person, but that was just beyond anybody's capability of being, you know, what that is. And I think there's always those expectations that we have, what we want somebody else to be like. And so then all of a sudden, well, then you're labeled toxic because you aren't behaving the way that I want you to. So it's declined more and more and more. And then when we see what is projected on TV and movies and what these people are supposed to be like, then it just then brings us to a spiral that keeps going down and down and down, because there's expectations that can never be met.
Beautiful. How about you, Marvel?
Marvel, yeah.
So, all that is great, and I completely agree with. Another thing is trying to control things outside of oneself. A lot of people like to, again, control the expectations they have of others, and because you don't fulfill them, automatically you become subject to Sorry, this is bringing up a lot of stuff right now. And yeah, it becomes like they come taken over by negative ego. And you try to get to them through logic and to a neutral kind of place of exchange, and you can't even get to that place with them because they're so trying to control how things outside themselves should be. I don't know if I'm putting this right.
You are stating it very clearly, and what I could try to reiterate is that here it is, this person bound with their expectations and controlling the situation and trying to dominate the other person with their expectations and not allowing you room to express yourself, not allowing you room or even trying to understand where you are. So you're not even on a fair playing field. This person is always with what they want, not what you want. You know what I mean? They're always trying to dominate. But then I could still say too, there's women that do that and there's men that do that. What it is it really? And so they would say, oh, it's toxic masculine. And the other person would say, oh, this is toxic feminine. But it's like, no, that's just one toxic motherfucking person who's just does not allow you space to be you and to express yourself. And in this relationship, it's all about what they want. And that just sounds like a selfish person. But we've squeezed it into this box. As if I'm a woman, I'm going to say, oh, it's toxic masculine. If I'm a man, I'm going to say, oh, it's toxic feminine. You know what I mean? When there's these people. And I was telling my sister this, I don't know, we were having this conversation. Because too, you could even use that as far as racism. Like that guy that would hang somebody because they're a racist is the same person that will rape his neighbor. He will beat his wife and he will steal out of his mom's purse. Is the level of his destructive behavior based on his race or his sex, or is it really based on his level of possession or his just basically, if you didn't even know anything about etheric or spiritual terms, you would just be like, that's just that guy's an asshole to everybody. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like that woman who does these things is an asshole to everybody. It's not limited to really black or white. They might try to make it seem as if, but it's not limited by race or by gender. So, but I understand what you're saying because you've been in a relationship with a man who was toxic, but then we have the label of toxic masculinity. And I think those are somewhat unfair, like just labels. I don't know, Sean, you say what you want to say, because now we've already said what we had to say.
Thank you so much. That helped me learn some things and good perspectives. I appreciate it. Yeah, and this topic is super triggery for a lot of people. And I'd also like, after we do this, I'd like to ask, what do you think is toxic feminism, feminine as well? To balance things, and that will also be triggery, so I'll be careful with my words, but I hope I don't offend anyone. See, with toxic masculinity, I'd say there's an overall toxicity that everyone has, and everyone has masculine and feminine in them, and so they have the higher divine version and the lower version. And there's an equation to get them to unity, or if they don't like each other, or if it's really imbalanced either way. And this also goes into left and right brain balancing, and which one is more dominant or not. And then if it's really unbalanced in a certain direction. So my definition is different than others. So everyone's entitled to opinion, and everyone's got wisdom from their opinion. So don't take my word for everything, just like take it as a puzzle piece, and it's take it with a grain of salt, and maybe there's some truth for people. I'd say that everyone, my last life was I was a woman, and I was a feminist, and I worked as an astronomer, and so I've been into that perspective, and there's value to it and there's a need for it, and you know, propel and all that. So now I kind of like look at all perspectives. So there should be a debate on this subject and defining it well, because it's not well defined. Everyone's got a different definition for it, and it could be construed as, oh, it's just overall toxicity in general, and everyone can have that. And if and a woman can also have toxic masculinity traits as well. They could, a man could have toxic feminine traits. So that if you want to get more precise with it, there's like a dynamic to the aspects of our archetypes with that. I'd say with toxic masculine, it's more of a left brain imbalance, where they're like locked into materialistic mind, scientific think, skepticism, and cynicism, and they're not open. They're like blocked off, they're closed off, and emotionally not, and they can even go into the dark triad of the psychopath, sociopath, and narcissism. Would be the aggressive masculine traits, and even like, you know, the aggressive feminist I would say that's, if I was being more technical, would also have that toxic masculinity, because they feel like they have to compete in that market, and there's reasons for it. And so, you know, I have forgiveness for it, and just because I call it toxic, I'm just calling it toxic for the sake of the concept of filing it. It doesn't mean I judge it or anything, and don't mean it's a bad thing, because sometimes we need these things to survive. So it's like part of the lower will. So when I say these terms, I'm not judging it, and I don't think these are bad. It's just, there's growth stages for everything, and we can choose what we're doing. And it's like the advancement of our branches of spirit, as we're all fractals of the universe experiencing itself for a unique equation that brings something back to the whole. So we're closed off. I would say toxic would be like, for the masculine, would be closed off emotions. There would be like a more of like, every type of thing that one can bring up as a trait has like a polarity spectrum to it, and there's a balancing act with each one of those, and you can either be too far gone in either direction, and that could be like either the toxic version of either the masculine or feminine, like domination or submission. If you're too dominant, way past like what's acceptable for a male, but not like too feminized as a male, to where you're repulsive to a woman, but because like some women want a man to take the lead and be the in the shotgun seat, as the, you know, they take on the hard positions, and they then are the support that make the expansion of the experience, and everyone has that in that role, and what they're attracted to. So it may not work for everyone, or they find what's the perfect balance in the match for where they're at, that can heal with them as they go. Then is also so you can either be too dominating, and there's like a perfect Goldilocks zone, which would be like, for my perspective, is at least, you know, people be different, is not being too controlling, but be able to make decisions, and also in bed, they like you being dominating, and then having.
And so don't skip that part, because that,
Yeah,
you know, like, there you go with some people wanting pain inflicted, or they want pegging, or they want like different stuff. And I wrote that down too, because there's some feminine men that want the woman to take the role of a masculine in bed. And then, I don't know, I guess I've seen some people that are like so extremely intent that men who have, I'm just gonna go ask it. So there's some men who have anal sex with women, they were like, oh, he's gay. And I'm like, no, that does not mean that person's gay. Then there's men who want to be pegged by women, and I don't really know, is that person gay or not? I don't necessarily think so. I think that they just have these different limitations with their body or something like that, that's what they do. So I'm not really even sure why people are against that. But if you have a woman that does want to be more masculine and a man that wants to be more feminine, what they do is pretty much what they do. I don't know why people have to put a label on it, but I do think that happens. But then I also know that there are some women that are toxic feminine and they want to be a feminist and they want to dominate men. And at first, I've seen some sites where they got men on leashes. They got women who got their husbands dressing in dresses. And I was just like so extremely freaked out by it. But then I also had to do a study on Kellogg where this is a man who was, what do you call that? Circumcising women and putting those devices on women to cover their genitals so that they couldn't touch themselves, or there's just certain Mormon groups and things that do things to women that are so extreme that we don't understand. And then once they free themselves from that, then you kind of have like this horde of women that becomes so extreme against men, again, because they've been abused. They're completely on the other side where they want to find ways to abuse men, which was a lot. And I'll let you have it because we don't have to skip. We don't have to skip on dildos. Okay, we can talk about. We can talk about whatever.
Yeah, the magic wands,
And Terry was in here for a 2.5 hour sex talk with us. We was like, we having sex with Terry tonight, and so we're good. This is mature content, mature audience, and freedom. So
yeah, I'll try to. It's like because I have my spiritual aspect of mine, so, and then I have my sexual aspect of mine, and they don't always mix, and I try to get them to dance. So it's like
that is
like
so true.
Because there's judgment, and but like I like that you're holding the space, so I'm like free to do that. And I don't judge people. People can do whatever they want. Some people. I want to have conversations about this because it is a very needed topic.
Right.
And a lot of people is craving it because they're like, oh, what do I do in these situations? What's going on?
Without being labeled as being unspiritual, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So and then I feel the potential of that because I want to lose half my audience, and then they think that I'm like devious or some shit, and then also but I need to help people and let them know that I accept them for who they are and I don't need to change them. But if they want a path to a greater spiritual growth in both light and dark together, then I have the answers for them, and so do you guys. So I appreciate you holding this. So yeah, it'd be fun talking about this more and more. I don't know exactly what your question was, but I can go into the concept.
I went ahead and addressed what I considered as toxic feminine. And then I also addressed the idea that, like you said, there's women that are masculine and men that are feminine. And we get together in different ways. And we get together with people as we see fit. And we just have to approach each other as those individuals. And I think a big problem too is sometimes people going outside to seek approval because they need to know, like, am I still spiritual if I do this? Or am I still acceptable or a good person if the way that I have sex is different from the way other people have sex? And then, a person being gay or transgender is not saying that, or ambiguous or androgynous is not a judgment of your spirituality. Really, the spirituality aspect is how much do you love others and how do you treat them and how do you judge them, not really what kind of sex you have. And when I meet somebody and shake their hands, I don't necessarily need to know what kind of sex you have when I meet you.
Right now, shaking your hand. Like I don't need
you to put a big scarlet letter on your forehead. And I kind of get freaked out when I meet certain people, whatever their sexual preferences, when they say, hey, you might not want to be my friend because I'm this. And I noticed that too with atheists. They come right up to you and they just want to tell you this. And I was like, how would you feel if when you met me, I said, hey, I like to cheat on my husband on Thursday night and we like to do anal? Like, that's none of your fucking business. I don't have to introduce myself with my sexual orientation and my preferences of what I do at night. because I'm not wearing my genitals on my fucking forehead. Actually, you need to pull back a little bit because your sexual identity is not your fucking identity as a person or a human being. And so I just kind of have feelings about that.
Yeah,
So,
and that'd be interesting if that was a movie where everyone just went in that conscious, or like everyone made a holiday where that's what they do in the day and they just express that. I don't know, but so yeah, there's different.
Woody Allen did it in a movie already, so I think.
Oh, did he?
I think so, a long time ago when they had the little sex machine, and me and Terry talked about that sex machine where you just go in there for like 2 minutes and it's like, ah. So it's really funny, but sorry.
Yeah, so there's different aspects of yourself, alter personalities, things that come up at different times. Sexuality is a natural thing, no need to shame it, and I am not shaming. And there's a light and dark spectrum to that. It doesn't mean it's bad or good. So there's a spiritual advancement in both light and dark, and then there's like being dominated by a negative force that like is taking away your control of yourself and will, and degrading to a level where they're fracturing themselves and they're getting less and less power, and they get influenced to, they're not in control of themselves. And there's a spectrum of full control over yourself, and then expanding into that too. And so there's a lot of different reasons for these. It could be like a past life that's like coming through and wants to integrate more of like your, like for a feminine, like with you're talking about with a pegging thing, that their masculine is wanting to come through, and they're you know, it's very, there's a very big difference in consciousness between men and women. A lot of men experience, and this is like scientific data, like this isn't like permanent. I found like you can clear this and it'd be like a freeing, like, oh my God, I'm not no more enslaved by my base desires anymore. But like for most men, it's, you know, and they don't get taught this, and the wisdom keepers have been killed off. So there's a lot of not being told how to deal with this energy, and then we go into porn and like get overloaded with sexual influence, and this is how women have their power over men, and to, you know, the industries that grow up from that, and you know, everyone has this buildup of sexual energy that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then takes over the main consciousness, and then asks a need to resolve it in some way, and based on what they're most easily triggered to allow the unfoldment of pleasure, positive experience, love, lust, excitement. It's not, you're not, each person isn't open in every sensation and perspective and trigger and genre and kink. So there's different kinks and things for different people, and that makes a map of who they are, what they've been, what their body type is, their inheritance from their DNA, their soul experience, trauma, things that they've been through, attachment that then makes like if somebody's been raped, then the person that did the raping will be part of an attachment that then shapes their personality going forward in sexuality, and can because a lot of these people have like a big light of creativity and source connection in their sacral that is parts of their pheromone, then attracted the abuser in the first place, and then there's like contracts with that in past lives, and abuser, and being a trap to take down that big darkness. So I'd say there's nothing really horrible in negativity of any particular kink, unless it's against the free will of another being, and it deeply harms them against their consent. But you know, there's also people that take consent to where there's people that want to be hurt, so there's like an interesting line to that. But as long as those are framed,
some of them want to abuse you and some of them want to be abused by you. That is true. There's people that want this. And then you also hit a spot too, where we've got food that's been genetically modified that affects our sexuality, birth control that crosses the placenta that affects our sexuality. And then there's also victims of sexual abuse and so what I've said is that you've created a new type of being. that
Yeah.
you can't
Endocrine
undo
disruptors.
what is created by these things. And so to try to label it right or wrong, it's impossible because it exists.
Right.
It has been created. It'd be like if I mix yellow and blue, green is here. Green is not gonna be undone. It now exists. And your judgment of it doesn't make it not exist.
Right. It's just like people's putting up boundary for what they don't want in their life, and then their standards. So it's like, oh, who's open to different things, and then somebody that acts very churchy and go, like is nunnish, and then in the bedroom and behind closed doors, they're all like whips and chains and
They're
stuff.
the worst. They're the worst.
Because they don't allow that out, so it's like a freeing effect. So there's like integration and ways to resolve stuff, and most people, the same thing with emotions, they let it build up until it explodes, and then it just takes over their sovereignty and they can't control themselves. And then when they feel I forget what it's called, post nut clarity, they like